Pattu from Brief in Cal, and in this video let's talk about why is the retirement corpus that we need so large. Now, we'll take an example of a retirement corpus that is 7 crores and actually ask if that's even possible by normal middle class folk. The answer is yes, but the question is, why is the retirement corpus so large? Every time people do a retirement planning exercise, or they do use a retirement calculator or use a retirement app. I've got one. I've got several calculators, both apps and Excel sheets, or a robot advisory template. You can try them out. But every time they use it, they ask, why is it so large? How can I even achieve this? So what we will do in this video is to answer why the retirement corpus is so large with an example. So let's take a simple example. So we'll take the current annual expenses as 3,60,000. That's just an arbitrary number I put in. We will assume that 75% of this 3,60,000 will persist in retirement. That is, the 75% of these current expenses will be there in retirement also, after you retire also. Adjusted for inflation, of course. We will assume that retirement is 30 years away. Keep this in mind, it's 30 years away, and the person will be retired for 25 years. So for example, let's say that you are now 30, you will retire at age 60, 30 years away, and then from age 60 to 85, you will be retired. So you expect to die on or before your 85th birthday. So the inflation is assumed to be 8% throughout. Inflation meaning the rate at which the expenses increase. And we will assume that from the retirement corpus, we will get a return of 8% overall post-tax. So this is just an assumption. You can change it. I just published a video a couple of days ago about how what is a reasonable assumption, what a number, what can be changed, how it can be changed, and so on. You can have a look at that. If you click on the channel link down below, it will take you there and browse through the videos. Let's not discuss the reasonableness or the unreasonableness of the numbers here. Of course, many people will complain two things. One, they will say 8% is too large in inflation to consider. It may or may not be, but the problem is that there are many additional expenses that can come in retirement. And using a slightly higher inflation accounts for that in a reasonable way. And some people may claim 75% of annual expenses is too much in retirement. You can take a little lesser. That is also unreasonable. I think most of the expenses that we have, that is the basic expenses that we have today, will persist in retirement. So 75% again looks reasonable to me. Of course, you can change it here and there and so on. But that's not the point of this video. Let's not get into that. The idea is to ask, why is the corpus so large? Even if you make the retirement, the inflation 6% and the post-tax average return from the retirement corpus a little higher, even then the retirement corpus will be reasonably large. It will be lower, but it will still be on its own large. So let's not worry about that. So what we will do is, I did this exercise in 2016, so that's why the year says 2016. So let's assume that the current age is 30. The year doesn't matter. The current age is 30, and you need 75% of 3.6 lakhs. That is 2.7 lakhs when you are age 30. That is, you are assuming 2.7 lakhs will be the expenses when you retire. So you are assuming that as the current expenses. So when you go to age 31, it will increase by 8% to 2.91 lakhs, age 32, 3.14 lakhs, and it keeps going. And by the time you hit the age 60, by the time you hit age 60, it multiplies by 10, it becomes 27 lakhs. It's a 10x increase over 30 years. There you can see that. So over 30 years, it's a 10x increase. Now, let's look at this in a slightly different way. This is a standard increase in inflation that you would have seen in many videos. Now let's look at it in a slightly different way. What we will say is that when you're age 30, the current expenses is 2.7 lakhs. After 30 years, that is when you become age 60, that 2.7 lakhs, if you assume an inflation of 8%, will become 27 lakhs. Age 31, 2.91 lakhs. After 30 years, at age 61 will become 29.34 lakhs. Again, age 32, 3.14 lakhs. After 30 years, age 62 will become 31.69 lakhs, and so on. So you keep doing this exercise for all the 30 years before retirement. So you now have data for 25 years. You don't need to do for all 30 years because you are assuming only from age 60 to age 85, so it's 25 years. So you're inflating current expenses year on year. So that's the sum of all the, if I take the sum of all the annual expenses in retirement, that's 21.7 crores. If I sum all these annual expenses, so by age 60, I need an annual expense of 27.16 lakhs. Age 61, it will become 29.34 lakhs. Age 62, it's 31.69 lakhs, and so on, up to age 85. If I sum all this up, I will get a staggering sum of 21.7 crores. So the first question is, what? 21 plus crores? Why do I need so much? Of course, you don't need so much. Because you are not going to plan for retirement like this, right? This is the absolute sum that you need year after year after year. You're not going to plan for retirement like this. When you retire at the age 60, you will have a corpus X. You will invest this corpus X, some of the money in equity, some of the money in fixed income, some of the money you may buy a pension for yourself, a little bit to some extent, and so on. Then the pension will give you, will help you meet day-to-day expenses, but if there are additional expenses due to inflation and so on, you will be able to, you will remove some money from that corpus, from the equity or fixed income, you will keep removing that money. So you will actually be investing the corpus. When I do this kind of a calculation, when I calculate year after year after year the annual expenses and simply add them up and get 21 crores, I am neglecting the fact that upon retirement, this retirement corpus X will be invested. I'm forgetting about that. So we have to factor this inside. So this is the kind of strategy I had mentioned. So you have some corpus X at this point when you retire. You will invest this money and you will keep drawing an income from it. Initially, the rate at which you draw is low, and the rate at which it grows because of the investment, interest income and growth in equity and so on, the corpus becomes higher a little bit, but you keep drawing money from it. Because of inflation, the amount you draw keeps increasing higher and higher. So at some point, the corpus actually starts falling down because you're drawing more money than the rate at which the corpus is increasing. And then at some point, the corpus grows to zero, reduces to zero. At that point, we are hoping before it reduces to zero, we will die. Or according to this calculation, it should reduce to zero at age 85. That's the essential idea. And we are assuming that we are going to invest this corpus X into a portfolio of equity, fixed income, etc., etc. Overall, post-tax return from this portfolio is 8%. So it's exactly equal to the inflation. So the real return is zero. That's what the assumption is. It doesn't matter if you take 6% inflation and 6% return, the numbers will not change. The real return is anyway the same. It will be zero. So if you assume that you are going to invest this retirement corpus, that 21.7 crores will reduce to a nice 7 crores. This will be the actual corpus that you want. You may say, what? It's still 7 crores. Can I achieve 7 crores? What many people fail to understand is that this is not 7 crores today. You don't need 7 crores today. You need 7 crores 30 years later. There is 30 years for your investments to grow. If you invest enough, if you invest right, you will be a multi-crore, but we have said it many times. You will get the 7 crores. Of course, in this example, I have taken a 30-year duration. The question is, how much should you invest? Naturally. There is another way to do retirement planning. I have talked about this in another video. Instead of investing all the full corpus in some 8%, the assumption I have made is that the overall portfolio return is 8% after retirement, but I do not know the details of where I am investing. I am just taking some average return. Instead of doing that, I can actually divide the corpus into an income bucket which will give me return which will give me income for 15 years, a high risk bucket, a medium risk bucket, and a low risk bucket. Divide the corpus, and I can slice up the retirement calculation a little better, and we can get a much more accurate estimate of the corpus needed. Sometimes the corpus needed may be a little bit more than 7 crores, sometimes it will be less than 7 crores, it depends on the inputs. If you use my robo-advisory template, which I have linked below in the description box, you will be able to make this kind of a calculation for yourself. I don't want to get into the details because I have talked about this before. So how much should I invest to get this 7 crores? So if we are going to invest in a portfolio now for retirement at a conservative 9% return, overall return from the entire asset allocation of into equity, into fixed income, it's just 9% after tax, which is, I think, fairly reasonable. Most financial planners take 15%, which is atrocious, or 12%, which is atrocious. Portfolio return is 12%, I'm just taking 9%. You need 40,000 rupees as a monthly investment. Of course, this monthly investment of 40,000 is greater than your actual current expenses or the assumed expenses that will persist in retirement of 2.7 lakhs a year. But that's fine. You can reduce that further. If you agree to increase the investment required by 5%, from 40,000 a month, it will reduce down to 24,000 a month in the first year. Then you keep increasing by 5%. If you are able to increase the investments by 10% every year, it will come down to 13,000 in the first year. Of course, we should increase by 10% every year. Yes, this is hard, but I can tell you from personal experience that I have been doing this 10% increase for the past almost 8 years now. 8 years now, roughly, because I have records. It is difficult, but it's just about manageable as long as your salary is able to increase and you do not increase your expenses too much. The problem with us is the moment we get a raise, the moment we get a bonus, we think of some new way to increase our expenses. And most of the time, that expense is not a one-time expense. If it is a one-time expense, it's fine. It will become a recurring expense and it will be a change in lifestyle. We will modify our lifestyle so much that we will not be able to live without that expense. That's the problem. That's the reason why we are not able to invest enough for retirement. So that's what's more important. And I think it's manageable to certain degrees. You can adjust this to however way you want and you can manage it. So the reason why retirement corpus is so large is because you are accounting for inflation after retirement. Whether it is 6% or 8% is a different matter, but it is large because you are factoring in inflation after retirement. But it is not a problem if you have enough time to invest for retirement. You definitely can achieve that multi-crore target. So don't worry about that. Just start investing and have a discipline to systematically invest, which means have a system and then invest, not start an SIP. Systematic investment is not SIP. Systematic investment means having a system and then investing. So I'll catch you again in another video. Bye.